Welcome. As I mentioned, this is Chopping Wealth, a monthly webinar that we do here at Shaping Wealth. It's part of our outsourced chief behavioral officer platform, and the objective of this particular feature of OCBO is to talk to some of the most interesting people in the world of behavioral finance, emotional intelligence, financial literacy, investor behavior, everything under that umbrella. I'm Brian Portnoy. I'm the CEO and founder of Shaping Wealth, and I'm like super excited. Like, today's guest is an old friend. I think we go back at least a decade. He's still in Pittsburgh. I'm sure most of you know I have Pittsburgh roots because I never stopped talking about it. But Gene Natali, CEO of Trotwood. Gene, take yourself off of mute. That's a start. And why don't instead of me telling everyone, your bio, give us a quick introduction.
Absolutely, Brian. Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. It does go back at least a decade. I remember the first talk that you gave at a CFA Society Pittsburgh event, where I approached you with fist bump, shook hands, and you kindly signed a copy of The Investor's Paradox that I then gifted to my brother as a financial advisor after I read it myself. Fantastic book. We should have date stamped that because we've kept in touch. Our journeys are similar in a couple of ways. First, we both came from the institutional world, and then within months of one another, embarked on the entrepreneurship route. So just funny timing on that regard. I spent 17 years in institutional investment management, working with large state retirement systems, large endowments, foundations, sitting in that boardroom and hearing the presentations of the various investors, the VCs, the PEs, the asset classes, the investment consultants, and just have a personal philosophy of trying to learn something in every room I'm in. And those are pretty good rooms to stay quiet and learn some things. Started Trotwood in 2019. We're a financial technology company formerly building financial planning software, conflict-free software. We do not manage or touch money, and I'm pretty proud of what we've done and where we're going.
Great. You couldn't have set the table better. So I want to actually roll back the clock, because you kind of gave us a lightning fast tour of a really fascinating career. And the big topic for today is kids and money, financial literacy. We're going to get way into the weeds in terms of your vision and execution of what's going on at Trotwood. But before that, like you say, you've been attached to the institutional money management space for a really long time. You've got deep ties to the world of financial advice. Click for detail a little bit in terms of what you saw and learned that ultimately was the inspiration for the Trotwood platform, because you're an older guy like me. You're not as old, but you're getting there. You let things marinate in a good way for some years, and then you're like, you've had a bee in your bonnet, a pebble in your shoe, to build something that is going to change the lives of millions of young adults, but you got there in a certain way. What took place?
I appreciate that question. I'm going to drop 3 specific pivot points that I think helped along this journey. The first was becoming personal friends with pension trustees on multi-billion-dollar plans, state retirement systems, learning and watching. And I'll source this statistic from JP Morgan's quarterly market guide. The average institutional investor meaningfully outperforms the average individual investor. The frameworks differ meaningfully. Institutional investors, a state retirement system, have a written plan, professionals working on their team, independent opinions coming in. For the individual, typically we're shooting from the hip with a Robinhood account. But to draw the tie here, these same pension trustees who were super knowledgeable, super caring, overseeing billions of dollars, would call me and say, Gene, can you help me set up a Vanguard Roth IRA for my grandson or granddaughter? And it was because the Vanguard website was so difficult to navigate. So they could sit in the most sophisticated investment conversation you can imagine and make a thoughtful, informed vote on a very large investment mandate, hundreds of millions of dollars. But then opening a Roth IRA was intimidating. Simultaneously, as this was happening, I was spending a ton of time in classrooms. In 2012, I authored The Missing Semester. Quietly, the book is used in all 50 states in classrooms. And when I was traveling, I would, oh, thank you, there it is.
There it is.
Would go from a pension meeting to a classroom filled with 50, 100 high school college students. And Brian, the energy in that room is electric. You say kids and money. The energy in that room is electric. We have to bottle it as a society, because something happens from the energy in that room where every young person has the world at their fingertips. And then society hits us upside the head for the next 3 or 4 decades as we navigate life. And we all know the statistics. I'm guessing your audience does as well. But the average household in America doesn't maintain that spark that we have at the age of 17. Our finances become quite difficult. So watching that bridge, a pension trustee saying, gosh, can you help me set up a Roth IRA for my grandkid? To watching that grandkid in a classroom ask terrific informed questions, recognizing that individual has the world at their fingertips, but then seeing friends who no longer had the world at their fingertips because of the choices they had made. That was a big part of the spark that sparked Trotwood. And you and I have given, gosh, I can't even guess the combined number of talks we've given. I'll just say thousands. That's not scalable. What's scalable is software. Software we can put in the hands of every young person in America if we can reach them where they are. Fun fact on Trotwood, we etched the number 17 into the bottom of our logo as a reminder of how important that age is from a societal perspective. It's our last chance to reach nearly everyone in one place, the classroom.
Amazing. This is a live conversation. A lot of people in the room. This can be as interactive as possible. Gene and I talk pretty frequently, and we usually have to stop ourselves after about an hour and a half. So we could keep going. We will end at the top of the hour. But by all means, the chat box and the Q&A box are available to everybody on the call. So anything you hear, anything related in the most broad sense to financial literacy, what's going on with young adults and money, Gen Z, you name it. The chat box is open, and I will be monitoring that and filtering that. Let's talk about the missing semester and the missing second semester. I live in this financial Twitter world a lot more than you do. I don't think a lot of my friends who are active in youth financial literacy appreciate that the missing semester has sold many hundreds of thousands of copies. It has been purchased in all 50 states. It's made a material impact on how financial education is brought to life in school districts all over the world. I guess 2 questions that I'd love for you to talk about. One, kind of where'd the book come from, and what was the journey there? And then 2, like what's the main takeaway? Like why has this thing quietly been one of the best-selling books in all of finance?
I like quietly because I'm not active on Twitter. I'm not active on the social media platforms. We self-published the book, and most of the purchases were direct bulk orders to schools, financial institutions. In hindsight, I'm very proud of the title because there is a wave of financial literacy now. I would have to have a different title if that book was published today, because there's a wave of education that's occurring. It's very good across the U.S. That will continue. Fantastic work being done in classrooms across here. Still work to do, but fantastic work is being done. The book was sparked. Now, at the time, I did not have the access to the classrooms and the student audience that I do now, Brian. It was sparked from, coffee with friends, nights out with friends of my wife's and mine, friends around a campfire who, to say this eloquently, would have fit in the statistical buckets that you and I read about in the news. They hadn't made smart money choices. But Brian, they had brilliant degrees, great jobs. The correlation to their net worth and their financial status was not their job, it was not their education. It was as simple as they'd never had this conversation. They weren't taught. And in the consumer-driven world we live in, they were losing the fight. And they were smart enough to win the fight.
No, I remember, I think because you and some others in the Pittsburgh CFA Society had invited me to give a talk, and it must have been around 2015 when the Investor's Paradox came out, 2014. And you came up, shook my hand, you told me about this book. I read the book. I'm like, wow, this is really powerful. Why do you think it's landed the way that it has? I mean, you do cover, I mean, you're as humble as it gets, so you're not going to brag on like its success. You cover, it seems like, a number of middle of the fairway, power alley type topics in terms of bank accounts and checking account. Do checking accounts exist for Gen Z anymore? We'll get to that. But budgeting, buying a car, saving for college, that sort of stuff. So in some ways, the grist in the mill was pretty normal stuff. But there's maybe was there a secret sauce, I guess, to like why this thing has landed the way it has? Because I kind of think of the missing semester as a bit of your intellectual capital growing and then marinating, and then kaboom, you and Jeff and others with Trotwood just exploding onto the scene.
It's a two-part answer, Brian. The book is short, and it is laser focused on the high school and the college student. So that was intentional. I vividly remember when I was first writing, having written a just long first chapter and said, wow, look how great this is going. And someone asked me and said, yeah, but who's still reading it?
I feel like I'm getting subtweeted right now, but no, go on.
Because I was so proud of myself that I'd taken this first step, and that hit me very early on. That's a great point. If we're going to title this The Missing Semester, if the conversation is just getting started, it's got to be digestible. It's got to be easy. So that was where I think we deleted 10 of the 15 pages and said, okay, this is going to be short and actionable.
Yeah.
The second piece we did that I'm quite proud of, and this is what ultimately gave us the confidence to publish the book. I put together a group of 30 advisors, grandparents, high school kids, recent college graduates, heavy Democrats, heavy Republicans, private sector, public sector, the most diverse group of 30 folks that I could find, people that would even have a hard time having a conversation with one another if they knew one another. And they all gave input, which was very humbling that they took time to do so. Deans of colleges giving input on this little book. And that was so powerful because I was able to get these outside perspectives and kind of filter through them to look at what the circle was that united many of their opinions. So those are the two reasons that the book has been successful. It was short, so students read it. And I think at the time, in hindsight, I'll say was smart enough to seek a lot of opinions. The best thing, that one of my favorite 2 emails I've ever received, Brian, and I'm sure you get these as well. One was from a college student who stayed up reading the book in an hour and then brought it to a campfire at a friend's house. And they talked about finance at a campfire on a Friday night. And the second was a student, a senior from a very rural school district who, because of the missing semester, had the confidence to start a dog grooming business. College wasn't this individual's future. And the book gave them the confidence to open a dog grooming business. And now they have 3 locations.
I mean, you're impacting lives. I mean, it's awesome. What are the, I mean, let's get into Jen's. I mean, we're talking about youth financial literacy, generally, but let's situate it in the here and now in terms of, because, to clarify for folks who don't know you lecture in high school, in high school classrooms, and you do a lot in colleges as well. And we'll kind of get later to your connection to Carnegie Mellon and University of Pittsburgh and, those fabulous institutions. But like, what are the, as it relates to this big topic, what are the common themes in classrooms based on literally thousands of conversations that you have with 17-year-olds, 22-year-olds, 19-year-olds, well-to-do neighborhoods, poorer neighborhoods, downtown Pittsburgh, West Virginia, central Pennsylvania, wherever you go. I mean, you're seeing an absolute cross-section of America. Tell us about the themes that you're seeing with money and kids.
I love the way that you framed that question, Brian. If you green screened the background, I don't think you'd be able to tell from the student questions if it's a well-to-do or the opposite in terms of the neighborhood code. That's the power of youth, of energy, of enthusiasm. That's the power of hope that hasn't been crushed. I have worked with some of, if not the poorest zip codes in the US, and they're some of my favorite because of the impact that you can have, the fist bumps you can have in those rooms. Some common denominators and some lessons. First, and this is a giant societal observation, teachers have the same questions that students have.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's yeah. Keep going.
So that's a big one, and I'll say that at like when you have a conference in a conference room or an auditorium filled with educators, they ask the same questions as students, because this conversation, you and I, we're breathing this every day. But if, let's say that hypothetically you and I were running, Gene and Brian's plumbing business, and we didn't think about money or finance, well, we'd have a completely different perspective. Our questions would be completely different, and we are in the very early stages of finance becoming mainstream. And by mainstream, I'll just say that the 99% Americans that don't work with a financial advisor maybe haven't had access to. But what's changing? Access to information. So I don't know the exact statistic on this. I'll round up and say 100%. If it's not 100, it's near. Every classroom has technology in some capacity, an iPad or Google Chromebook. Again, that importance of the age of 17, they have access to information, they have access to technology. That puts the job of that teacher in the front of that classroom to not just A, to light the spark, but B, to keep it lit in those kids. And what I'm seeing is less the zip code matter and more, does the kid want it? That's the barrier right now. If they want it, there's nothing holding these young people back, Brian. They're going to take on the world. If the industry won't welcome them, they're going to build new industries. They aren't taking no for an answer. The fire is so lit. We got an email 2 nights ago from a young man from New Jersey, just saying how impacted he was, age 16 years old. Built a financial plan. He's going to go take on the world now. That's the excitement. So tune out the noise, tune out some of the statistics on that regard, and look at everyone in your classroom or in your client base as a human being.
There's a lot of stuff going on here, but it's a perfect transition point to at least some of what's going on at Trotwood, because you're effectively giving 17-year-olds and 21-year-olds the ability to create their own financial plan. And we're going to attach this to the nature of advice. There's a ton of advisors on the call, a lot of friends, mutual friends here. But let's kind of, I feel like I might be jumping around a little bit chronologically, but that's okay. I really want to get into Trotwood and sort of the core thesis behind what you're building, such that when you enter these classrooms and you talk to and touch, impact tens of thousands of students, every year, every semester. What's kind of the core thing that everyone needs to know about Trotwood? And, this somewhat, I was going to say, I'll say the word weird, but not weird, but sort of offbeat idea that 17-year-olds should have a financial plan.
Yeah. So I appreciate this. First is, you mentioned the advisor audience, Brian. I want to say something to the advisors listening. the kids and grandkids of your clients mean more to them than their money. And I think that's going to be a deny, and that's stating the obvious when it's said, but we are so laser focused on it as an industry on the money side. I don't know. I would speculate, I speak for you as well, when I'd say, take every nickel I have and give me a healthy, happy family. And I know that just aligns all in with what you're doing with Shaping Wealth. But that's a common theme I like to talk about. But the core thing everyone needs to know on Trotwood. I'll start this with a short story because I devour information, Brian. I think we are so fortunate to live in this era where folks like you and I can get advice from the world's best CEOs who are talking openly on podcasts just like this webinar. I start every day with a webinar, podcast, a book. In Dropbox, when they were founded, in the first year, they only had one customer. Yeah, and the CEO is I forget the name of the podcast at the time, this was a few years ago, is sharing the story how he called this customer, of course, didn't tell the customer, you're my only customer. I just would love to know what it is about Dropbox that you find most valuable. And that lesson, I think, is really powerful in hindsight because look what Dropbox is today. And the analogy he gave is at the time, no one knew they needed secure storage. We were still so early stage in the software conversation. The concept of secure storage hadn't even entered the arena. A financial plan is so foreign to folks without money. There is an education piece that we're going to need to do. I think much of that will be handled in part from nonprofits doing great work in this space. Next Gen Personal Finance, Tim Ranzetta and his team, Mike Sheff and the team at Foolproof, Jumpstart, heroically working in the classrooms. Junior, there's so many good groups doing this that if we are correct that the wave of financial literacy is here, I want to be the beach that they land on. And that's specific to your comment, though, on the 17 and a 21-year-old. And this was hugely important to me. Anyone can build a financial plan without giving Trotwood a first name, last name, or email. And that's non-negotiable. We aren't going to put a wall because this is just a personal inspiration of mine, Brian. I don't know where it came from, but I imagine I talk to myself in my head, think of potential customers. And early on, I'd imagined a young lady in Arizona. She was a high school senior. This is completely fictitious, but it served as a use case. 17 years old, brilliant, 4.0 student, had to drop out of sports because she has to care for her younger brother. And she cares for her younger brother by going and working at the 7-Eleven until midnight. And then she gets home, makes some breakfast. And for some reason, that use case stuck in my head as this is the girl who needs a financial plan. And if we could reach her, and right now, maybe she wouldn't give us her information, and that kept her from getting a financial plan. And I know I'm that way. If someone asks for my email, they've got to earn my trust before I give it. So zero barriers to entry. Every single young person can build a financial plan. We have nearly 100 million unique data points within the app. There are 13.5 million career and location combinations, or customize your own. That was hugely important to me. So first, we've got to overcome the Dropbox analogy and teach people why they need a financial plan. And then second, we had to have the tool that they said, oh, wow, now I know what one is. And I'll share an analogy. 100% of institutional investors have a financial plan, and 100% of financial advisors build financial plans for 100% of their client base.
I see, your colleagues, Jeff and Yazid on the call. Maybe talk a little bit about the tools and ecosystems you've bought. And, for those who are thinking, oh, is this just an advertisement for Trotwood? Hell yeah. I mean, what you're building is freaking ridiculous. So, tools like Finmoji, the career map. I mean, you guys have brought a level of empathy to financial literacy that is just tops. And I know you work with Tim Ranzetta and the Jumpstart people. There's amazing organizations. You're sort of part of that kind of Justice League, Avengers type youth financial literacy. You've built, this digital ecosystem that, number one, is gorgeous from a design point of view. But number two, I want to keep pushing on this quote unquote offbeat idea that 17-year-olds should have a financial plan, and that you give them the technology to do that. So, kind of maybe click for detail on some of the tools like Finmoji, that are, what do they do, and why are they the right thing for, that story that you just told about the, young woman in Arizona, which it might be a fictitious story, but guess what? That story is taking place tens of thousands of times every day across America.
No, thank you, Brian. Well, and huge shout out. Thank you for the comments on the design too. Maggie Mayer, Ben Transu, our design team is fantastic. We have early on in the Trotwood journey, I'd gotten advice from someone who said, great people build great products form great companies, and that's non-negotiable. We have great people at every level at Trotwood, and that is absolutely core to our success. Far less me, far more them in terms of why we are where we are. To specifically answer the question, why a 17-year-old needs a financial plan, then I'll jump to Finmoji, Brian. Two things have happened. The first is the decline of the pension fund and availability. And I teach personal finance at the University of Pittsburgh. I have taught there for 10 years now. They built a course around the missing semester. I've only seen 4 pensions come out of my class in 10 years. So 400 students, 40 semester, 4 pensions, 396 that didn't have a pension. Pension is income for life. So we pooled income for life here in the States, but we didn't replace it. And we're surprised that employee turnover is high. It's a giant problem, right? Training is expensive. Where is employee turnover not high? My son's second grade teacher has been there for 40 years. My UPS driver hasn't changed in 14 years in my house. The mailman hasn't changed in 14 years in my house. This concept of financial security that comes from a pension from income for life is one to grasp onto, because without that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I have plenty of friends, Brian, I speculate the same, who would make a comment over a beer or coffee. I'm spending my last nickel, my last second here on earth. My goal with my money is to make it last exactly as long as I do, because I work too hard to leave any left over. We need to completely erase that line of thinking. And this feeds really well into what you're doing at Shaping Wealth. We need to completely change the way we think about making our money last as long as we do, and instead say, make it last way longer. Leave a legacy, change the world. You had referenced Jumpstart. We had the opportunity to keynote Jumpstart last year at their conference, and we gave the stage to 4 young students from Atlanta, 3 high school, 1 college. And they built financial plans with the Trotwood app, and then taught an audience of close to 400 teachers how to use Trotwood in their own classrooms. It was beyond humbling, Brian. My favorite moment, though, young woman, college, Gianna, she built an incredible plan, incredible life story. She built a pretty good surplus. She had modeled to maximize her Roth IRA and do a little bit extra in a company match. And unbeknownst to her, we had looked at her plan and had a goal for $7 million, which she was thrilled with. I said, Gianna, you've rocked it, fist bump. Like, how proud are you? And she's like, I'm really proud. This is a great moment. It's a really good. And Gianna, we took half of that because it was way more than she needed. And said, Gianna, could we start a foundation with this for you and show you what could happen? And so we took $3.5 million, put a traditional, so speaking to your financial advisor audience, I took put a traditional financial planning model around that. We're operate like an endowment, 3% spending policy, and let it grow for the next 104 years. Coincidentally, the exact length of the Milton Hershey Trust. Gianna had a foundation for $8 billion. She got teary-eyed on the stage, Brian, because her younger brother had been killed by a drunk driver. Remember how I started this. We have to change the way we think from our money lasting as long as we do to our money lasting way longer. We took a young woman from Atlanta who had built a plan for $7 million, had the foresight to think, I don't need $7 million. Yeah, I'd like to start a foundation to change the world. And she at least sees a path to do so now. So that's a message I love to resonate with young people. Don't expect someone else to do it for you. It's a caring, passionate generation coming up through the system right now. Just do it, because you can't. That's why every 17-year-old needs a plan.
And when you talk through these plans and use the numbers that you do, they're going through different scenarios where they're starting here at a young age, and they are searching for the type of job they want that's going to pay them a certain income. Some of that's going to be savable and then investable. And then you kind of you help them sort of excite the possibilities of, oh, when compounding does its work at age 35, 45, 55, all of this. So, someone we're all fans of, Hal Hirschfield, who talks, writes at length and brilliantly about the future self. You're in a sense, the story that you just told made me think of Hal's recent book on the future self, and how hard sometimes we don't serve that person, that next version of ourselves well, because it's hard to, from a cognitive point of view, even imagine who that person is. It sounds like some of what's happening here is that you're taking the human imagination and turbocharging it in a way where people can see a financial future that they maybe had never even thought of before.
Previously unimaginable. I think that's a great example. When you meet future self in 20 years, what's that introduction going to look like, Brian? It's going to be a fist bump and a thank you, or a teary-eyed, what the heck did you do to me? Hope you enjoyed it. I love that analogy. No, Brian, there is, gosh, I'll warn the audience, because you and I, when we talk, we go on tangents. Two thoughts pop in my head when you say this. One, so historically, again, I'll speak to the financial advisors of the audience right now. When did the average American start saving? Like mid 30s to mid 40s, right? Like that's kind of where that, like historically, that's where we dive in. What if a 15-year-old starts? If the goal was, let's say hypothetically, I started at 35 or 45 and tend to retire at 65, could I start at 15 and have meaningful passive income at 35 or 45? Maybe. It's worth the conversation, right? And what could that generation do with that kind of financial independence? The second part, I'm going to go a little bit, maybe just slightly dark here, because one thing I'm quite proud of, and I was thinking about when you said it earlier on the number, I bet, I don't track the number, I'll bet over 1 million people have read The Missing Semester now, Brian. And that's kind of a odd thought when you had mentioned that earlier, in 10 years of the book and the number of schools it's in. I spend a lot of time talking with students. I genuinely enjoy it. I want to look them in the eye. I want to see their emotion. We were in a very rural, very, very poor part of West Virginia, a state that certainly, ranks low in average income. And we were talking with high school students who had built plans. Brian, many times this concept, to your question earlier of how do you get a 17-year-old interested in this, they form a line to talk and ask questions. So it's really humbling. So, and actually, Brian, next question go after this, thinking again of your financial advisor audience here, a phone call that has been pretty common to me in the last year is financial advisors calling saying, how can we do more in our communities? Because they see what's happening in the education place. And to a small extent, the financial advisor industry is getting left behind in this education conversation. Maybe we can pivot there, but I want to complete the thought on this young man in West Virginia. A small group of students stayed around and said, Gene, is this real? Like, how do I believe this number? Because a little bit unimaginable. It's a little bit unbelievable. Like thinking about how to get dinner tomorrow is where my mind's at. The real hard boots on the ground conversations. We said, no, it is real. That's one thing I'm really proud of in our app, Brian, in a finance world that is filled with calculations, sophisticated, meaningful calculations. We've kept it simple, and it's real data. By using real data, people can make real decisions. So you didn't mention the careers, the cost. It's all real salary data, real cost of living data. We looked these group of students in the eye and said, how do we reach you? How, if you are leaving this saying, I don't believe it, what can we do to make you believe it? You could have given me multiple choice and the pages to write. I would have got the answer wrong. They said, show us what happens if we don't, because we live in a pretty tough part of the country. And that hit me in a way that not much has recently, Brian. Even in these zip codes, I usually see excitement, like I can save $1 a day. I can get this, Gene. Like it's like the rah, rah, rah. This one stuck with me because it was the opposite of rah, rah, rah. They look at the yearbook and unfortunately gave the example of, overdose, passed away. And we had earlier talked about how important it was that Trotwood have no barriers to entry, and that is non-negotiable. That's why we need to reach those people quite badly.
Let's broaden. This is a typical Gene and Brian conversation, everybody. So, welcome. We're going to go just all over the place. I want to learn more about Gen Z. I've got 3 Gen Z kids, as you know, 20, 19, and 16. Despite what I do for a living, I don't know if they have a healthy relationship with money. And, we're getting some questions in the chat. I want to say that Jeffrey Johnson put a great comment in here touching on, building healthy relationships with money. But let's kind of go problem solution, rural West Virginia, Fox Chapel in Pittsburgh, which is a very affluent neighborhood. Your stuff is in 50 states. Your millions of people have engaged with the missing semester framework. Now, thousands of people are engaged with the Trotwood app and so forth. What is Gen Z telling us, either at a general level about what's on their mind? I have a view because I live with 3 of them, but like, what do we need to know as financial professionals about Gen Z generally, and then specifically on the topic of money?
This is just my opinion. This is my disclosure here. I think Gen Z is saying help and don't ignore me. Because if you ignore me, I'm going to either figure it out or I'm going to get left behind. And I don't like either of those options. I think they're saying help. And I think, often you have to listen to the words that aren't being said, Brian, and some of the kids that aren't talking are the ones who are screaming help the loudest. The 2 subset that I interact with. So, on one hand, it's really exciting to say, Eugene, you've taught personal finance for 10 years at the University of Pittsburgh, cutting edge that the university is thinking that way. On the other, I have 40 kids in my classroom on a campus of a heck of a lot more. We're not even moving the needle. I've had students go to the chancellor and say, why is every student at the University of Pittsburgh not required to graduate with a financial plan? That class served as an impetus for Trotwood as well. It's a pass-fail class where the students do one thing. They build a working financial plan for life after school. And 100% of the semesters I've taught, I've had students approach me after class with tears in their eye about the impact that having a plan meant to them. That's real. That's finance, and that's real. And that's Gen Z, to your question. But it's a targeted group who chose to take a Friday afternoon course about finance. Not everyone's in that room on Friday afternoon. So we've got to solve that. That's what makes the high school classroom so exciting. You get everyone. You get the whole class. And that's a whole nother paradigm, because that's your chance to get the spark lit in everyone. And there's a group that you could just put a piece of paper on a board and say, build a plan, and some percentage would do that and go like own their life. That's the minority. There's a percent that's going to ignore you even if you were handing out $100 bills. It's just not their arena. And the middle ground is where we can have, I think, the biggest impact of moving the needle. Call it that 70 to 90% range. And what happens, Brian, if you ask for help and someone doesn't give it? You don't keep asking. So if my hypothesis is correct that Gen Z is asking for help, whether they're verbalizing it or not, I think it's up to us as an industry to listen and to provide it.
So speaking of, this is a couple comments, and then our friend Ashby asked a really good question in the chat. And guys, chat's open. So, and crazy enough, we got 20 minutes to go. So we're we always talk fast, but maybe we'll talk faster. This is such a story of financial empowerment. And I think often when all of us think about financial literacy, it's, well, here's a bunch of concepts. saving and spending, budgeting, student loans, debt, home ownership, things like that. These are concepts to be learned. You're engaging, from a behavioral science point of view, you're actually engaged in behavior change, which is harder. But if you get it right, it's a coil that is sprung for real impact, which leads to Ashby's question, which is, how do you keep people engaged? So they're in high school, it's mandatory. In college, it's not. But here you are, either it's through the course or through the app or both. But as Ashby says, speak to how the app keeps kids, young adults really engaged beyond the financial plan, because the lasting change is what matters.
Wow, absolutely. It's a great question, Ashby. Good to see the question. Good to hear from you. Here's the challenge. So Trotwood is an app, but we don't want TikTok-like stats, right? That's not healthy for anyone. How closely do you need to monitor your money? Turn it off, right? Like the purpose of a plan, of a compass, is to just keep you head the right direction, not look away from it. We do have some very powerful tools. So our Pro product is live on our team's phones. It's not public, but it has features that measure contribution streak, budget forecasting. Our long-term goal with Trotwood, to the Dropbox analogy, first is to create awareness of the importance of a financial plan. Second, it's to live that plan for the next, I'll say, 20 to 40 years. With my hope and dream being that, Ashby or someone like him is onboarding a customer, let's say 20 years from now, and that customer is able to, knocks on Ashby's door, says, Ashby, heard great things about you. I'd love to work with you. And Ashby simply says, hey, can you send me your Trotwood profile? And that's all Ashby needs to onboard a new client, because this is an individual who graduated, low net worth, student loan debt, had nowhere to really turn, and was able to use Trotwood to make informed financial decisions from the age of 17 or 22 up until they built the wealth to work with the industry, and then simply say, hey, here I am. This is who I am. And I think that solves a fascinating psychological kind of piece of the financial advisory puzzle, Brian, where how often do you hear from an FA saying, I don't know if the customer gave me all the information, or I don't know if that was the honest answer. Well, now in this example, Ashby would have a 20-year history of a person's financial profile. That's our goal. So financial plan is step one. The financial center for individuals' lives is step two. I love, I put the chat up also. This is, I don't want to I won't see the question, Brian, but the concept of stress that I've seen pop up there. Do you know that financial stress, financial stress, number one source of stress at home, number one stress in work, and now number one stress on college campuses. It's hitting us upside the head everywhere.
Yeah. The problem's really big. The opportunity to do just bold, audacious things like Trotwood, audacious in the best sense, is kind of right in front of us. Courtney Randstrom, friend of Shaping Wealth, just threw a question into the Q&A box. Incorporating conversations around wealth inequality in your content, is that something that comes up? She's got two young daughters. One of them speaks to ask the questions about haves versus have-nots, seeing people in town who have less or are homeless. You have such a bird's eye view, well, not bird's eye view, ground floor view of being in rural West Virginia and being in the affluent suburbs of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Cleveland. How do you accommodate this big, sensitive topic that's not just financial, it's actually more political than financial?
Yeah, on the political front, I've talked to fairly high-ranking politicians and asked why they haven't run on a financial literacy or a poverty reduction platform. And when it comes to like our audience here, Brian, it takes time, right? Like wealth takes time to build. It doesn't happen overnight. And because it takes time, it's not an attractive platform to run a political campaign on. I hope that starts to change. The Fed has some fascinating charts on poverty in America, and it'll show you it's pretty flatlined since 1970. So one hypothesis could be, oh, great, that's because we made so much progress prior to that. Well, the other hypothesis would be, well, why haven't we made progress in 50 years? Because it certainly still surrounds us. I'm less involved with the community nonprofits working specifically with homelessness. I have done work with 2 of our local jails on helping folks use a financial plan to reestablish themselves once they exit the jail. So I do have some experience there in the true homelessness. That would not be my expertise. My home school district does have 30% of our student population that is on food stamps. So I think it often flies under the radar of the average, K through 12 student who is and who isn't. But what I'm certain from talking with folks, the 30% who are, they know they are. So that's a psychological piece that I think is difficult to speak to if you aren't in that demographic. It does circle the wagon, and maybe our etched 17 should be broader. But the reason that 17 is etched in our logo is after 17, you become a legal adult. So fortunately, your financial choices have consequences. You can learn hard lessons that in theory could last a lifetime. So 17 is only our last chance to reach everyone. It's not our first. And I think to the question that was posed, there's no age too early to start. And folks are like right now, you mentioned, Tim, Next Gen, Foolproof, they're best in class organizations. They're mostly high school focused, tiptoeing into middle school. There's far less in the K through 5 arena. We have a game I'm really proud of. Shout out to our whole development team called Finulator that takes all of our real world data and lets classrooms play auto mechanic in Reno, Nevada, and see who can be a millionaire with real data. Those kind of experiences will be real. And I fairly strongly believe this, Brian. It has to be real data. It can't be made up. I can't go play Super Mario Brothers and then I can play and have fun. And probably our audience, that shows how dated I am in my gaming to reference Super Mario Brothers and not like one of the trending games. But
Should I talk about Diablo 4 or pretend like I haven't played Diablo 4?
But it's going to start earlier. And positive, I'm an optimist. Yeah, our CTO Yazid Hamdi, I talked pretty early in the morning. He's in Germany, and my energy level is quite high early in the morning, Brian. Warned. Positive thinking is so important to success, and it has to start earlier. So maybe if we get these kids seeing what's possible at a younger age, it comes from not just believing it, but assuming it will happen. Oh, if I do this, this will happen. So I like that question.
And maybe this is a focus on the negative, but it's something that I've been thinking about for years, and I don't have a great answer. I mean, I've been active in various financial literacy programs like University of Chicago's FinLit, which is absolutely fantastic, run by Rebecca Maxey, active in some other things. I'm just struck by the fact that on the one hand, there is no topic on which there is more higher consensus. I'll just round up and say 100% of people I know, regardless of station in life, political affiliation, if you think about sort of the FinTwit financial community, 100% think that financial literacy should be taught in schools. It's a priority. And here we are in 2023 with this conversation having gone on for literally decades. There's entrepreneurs like you who are just breaking down doors. There's lots of other programs out there. I've kind of gone through the list of who's out there. There's hundreds of organizations, actually thousands of organizations that say, hey, why is this? And we could just bring it back to Trotwood if you want, but why is this not a solved problem? Is it a structural thing that in the US we have 50 school jurisdictions and there's not one, but then we pull out to a global lens and we see that this is a global problem. Like, gosh, like when you have 100% consensus that this is a good thing to solve and it hasn't been solved, I just can't, I'm always kind of like scratching my head a little bit.
Part of it is education isn't enough. This subject is one that's bigger than a letter grade, right? So the consensus right now is on the letter grade. You know, what good is 3.2 million high school seniors graduating with an A or B in personal finance if there isn't an action step that follows? And liberal arts education on my side, I don't use everything I learn, Brian. This is one you have to learn. So it has to kind of stand out from the crowd of, oh no, just another class that I take a letter grade in. And you had mentioned the great work. We hit some of the stalwarts in the industry, but you're right. There are thousands of community groups working just tirelessly with small numbers of constituents in their neighborhoods, having just as big of an impact. The wave is here. What's less available is the action step. And that is what we are building at Trotwood. But there are fewer places to turn where you can turn that letter grade into like financial empowerment. And that's where I do hope the industry steps up. I want to see, you know, CFA society, CFP society, financial advisors make this a pillar of their platform, and not in like a Dodd-Frank way. If you remember back, Dodd-Frank, every bank had to have a financial literacy. No. Hey, this is the right thing to do type of way.
Where are you finding pain points? What have been some of the, you know, we talk not just about FinLit, you and I talk about entrepreneurship, the slings and arrows, the late nights, the early mornings, all of that. Maybe speak to, you know, some of the challenges as a business builder, business owner, you and your partners have had to navigate and transcend, because this, you're a small business owner. This ain't easy. Maybe speak to the entrepreneurial challenge of trying to solve this problem.
I think the short answer would be it's hard. And maybe that feeds off of the last question, Brian. Financial education, and this is by no means a hit on the groups working in it, but the education piece is easier than the action, right? I think it's also worth, you know, fist bumping the folks like Robinhood and Acorn. Sure, they have flaws in their business models, but they've broken down barriers where now investing is accessible. I remember buying stocks back in the day with bid-ask spreads that people would think weren't believable. Now, with real-time trading. So there have been barriers to entry have been broken. And like anything, that first wall after the wall toppled, people broke. There was such enthusiasm. Of course, they're day trading on Robinhood. Of course, they're hopping on the GameStop bandwagon. But now we learn from that. So we take a step back and we're going to be more informed as we move forward. That's where I hope that Trotwood and companies like us really can have an impact. It's hard. Our development team is absolutely best in class. It's top 1% talent. I could not be more proud of their commitment to what we're doing, how hard they work, but it isn't easy, even with a team of this caliber. That's a lesson I've learned. It's great to say, yes, I want a financial plan. I dream of a world where every single high school senior walks across the graduation stage with a working financial plan, that every college senior working professional has a working financial plan. I dream of that world. We're attempting to build it. There's a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Maybe the technology piece to this. I mean, you have a big dev team. You're tapped into, you know, at Pitt and Carnegie Mellon. I mean, just cutting edge technology, AI. You know, how is it worth getting into it all? Like the importance of that, or is that behind the scenes? Is that just sort of the framework? Because it does seem like you have, not that this is really a competition, but you seem to have a competitive advantage in the way that you're marshaling technology. This isn't just a textbook or a series of PDFs. This is a interactive ecosystem unlike any I've ever seen.
Brian, it's a great question. I'll feed this answer into your previous question too, on why we're kind of losing the money battle as a society. Carnegie Mellon is as talented as advertised. It is a very special place for so many reasons. So we're very fortuitous to be based in Pittsburgh and to live next door to an incredible university. Is it the only one in the world? Absolutely not, but it's ours here in Pittsburgh. I've learned the difference between great talent and good talent, and that's a mistake I'll share. So as folks who I came from 17 years of finance, had never written a line of code. I still don't code, but we have incredible engineers that do. I still could not tell you personally like a great developer from a good developer, but Yazid can, so I don't have to. We have learned how to build this company and build this team where we get the great people to build the great product that we have very heavily validated. We have 4 ITC programs, which is programs with Carnegie Mellon's Masters of Software Engineering and their human-computer interaction, helping us on things like UI, UX, and small one-off products. So we are very ingrained with the school. When you ask the question, the thought that popped in my head, though, was why are we losing the battle? Well, many of these students are going to Apple, Netflix, Amazon, Google, Facebook, and their job is senior software engineer on paper, but they're building the algorithms that get our paycheck. Brian, these students are brilliant. I mean, our team is brilliant. It's incredible the talent that we've compiled, but these brilliant minds can accomplish the tasks that are given them. When the task is, I've talked to UX designers at Facebook that'll show me the difference in click-through rate if you move 2 millimeters down and 13 millimeters over. Does Gen Z know that was put there for that precise reason, to get that paycheck that they worked so hard for the last 2 or 4 weeks? So it's not just you and I versus the store window advertisement. It's literally you're holding a paycheck and the whole world wants it now, and they're building algorithms to take it from you.
I want to wrap up with 2 questions, 2 topics: parents and then advisors. Just about everybody on this call is a mom or dad. What advice would you give to the parents on the call for increasing the chance that their kids have a healthy relationship with money?
Open a Roth IRA if they have a job, and if not, open a custodial account, even if it's $10 a month. Just get them started. We do this with our kids, Brian. Their babysitting money, they get to choose whether they want to put it in their investment account or buy something. We learn, a neighbor gave me this idea, so please feel free to steal it, parents. If they choose to investment, I double it. So if they say, here, Dad, here's $5, put in my investment account, I put 10 in the investment account. Whereas they could have taken the 5 and gone to Target. And they have kind of grown. So of course, again, to my analogy, if you and I were talking plumbing and not finance, it'd be different. So let's reach those plumbers. We can do the same thing. Let me share, guy. I'm cognizant of time, quick tangent. I was really proud of this. 2 nights ago, a 15-year-old young man came and sat beside me. His very good family friends, they run a farmer's market. So call them farmers. And he had asked me he said, I saw this show coming out on like GameStop. Should I buy GameStop? He said, I think I want to be an investor. He said, I want to buy GameStop or Nike. And that's how he approached me. I thought, this is awesome. And we sat down and said, well, why do you want to buy GameStop or Nike? You want to buy GameStop because a movie's coming out. You want to buy Nike because you like Nike shoes. But we were able to talk and say, what if I'm not going to say no to doing those 2 things if you're interested in that, but open a Roth IRA because you've got a really good job right now. And I gave him the analogy that you and I talked about a little bit ago. Most people don't ask the questions that he just asked me until they're 35 or 45. What if you start at 15? What does that mean? And he actually got that point. I didn't do a great job of explaining GameStop. I didn't do a great job explaining a Roth IRA, but he caught that point. Wait, if I start at 15, what can happen to me? Because I'm a lot younger than 35 or 45. So that would be my number 1 advice for parents. The world's changed. We don't have pension funds. Put the power in the hands of your kids. And I am a huge advocate of investing.
Get them involved, explain the dynamics at an age appropriate level, in some ways it's behavior over content, behavior, action over knowledge, or a smart combination of the 2. last question is advisors. We've had a bunch of people on the call. We get lots of people watching the replay of these conversations. If you're a financial advisor, and the typical financial advisor is serving people in their 50s and 60s, maybe their 40s, but it depends. What should they be doing in this battle for youth financial empowerment? I say that distinct from literacy. And feel free to give like a little bit of a commercial for Trotwood. Like, should they know about the app? Should they know about, because if you talk to somebody about their kids, they're listening. And so an advisor talking to a 50-year-old couple with, a few kids that are maybe teenagers, that's probably a conversation they want to have. So I guess, our parting thought should be, what should advisors be doing to update their thinking to modern Gen Z challenges so that they are not only running a better business, they're like doing great work?
Be visible will be my concise answer. We modeled a user persona this morning for a centenarian who was building plans with Trotwood for her grandkids and great grandkids. So that is certainly a use case, but you have to be visible. A few years ago, Brian, Bank of Hawaii did a just fascinating event that flew out, and they had their 100 largest customers of the banks. They took those customers to a dinner and they left me with the kids and grandkids. They still talk about that event because their customers still talk about that event. That's an example of putting the kids and the grandkids in the room, of being visible, not just taking the parents out, not just sitting down quarterly and saying, here's your statement. They gave every kid a copy of the missing semester. We wrote personal notes in it and just had a blast. So if it matters to you, you have to be visible.
Gene, this is just fabulous. I want to thank so many people for showing up. Gene, thanks to you, not just for showing up today, but man, what you've put into the world, it is virtuous, dude. It is really good stuff. You, Jeff, Yazid, the whole team at Trotwood, I'm just really impressed. And just by way of conclusion, this was Chopping Wealth. It's a free feature of Outsourced Chief Behavioral Officer. We're glad that so many people could show up. Feel free to tell others about it. These are the sorts of meaningful conversations that we want to have about true financial empowerment, what we might call funded contentment for everyone. And I'll say it a third time, Gene, thank you for being here.
Brian, thank you. I'm just proud to know you.
All right, buddy. Thanks, everybody.